Welcome to Season 2 of Test Those Breasts podcast. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn. I am really excited to continue this journey and mission into 2024 to help shorten the overwhelming learning curve for those who are newly diagnosed or yet to be diagnosed with breast cancer. It has been such an honor and a privilege to be able to connect and interview many survivors, thrivers, caregivers, oncologists, surgeons, nurses, therapists, advocates, and more in order to provide much needed holistic guidance for our breast cancer community. Breast cancer has become such an epidemic, so the more empowered we are, the better. By listening, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast, it truly does help bring in more listeners from all over the world. I appreciate your help in spreading this knowledge. My episodes are released weekly on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and other platforms. Now let's listen to this next episode of Test Those Breasts. Hey friends, welcome back to this episode of Season 2 of Test Those Breasts. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn, and today I am so happy to have my new friend, Shannon Burrows, on my show, and she actually has a podcast as well called Bustin' Out of Breast Cancer. Get it? Bustin' Out of Breast Cancer. It is actually really cool because I really actually found Shannon last spring before I even started Test Those Breasts. I was looking around for different breast cancer podcasts and I ran across her. And I have to tell you that her appearance, as far as her cover page and when I started listening, is very dynamic. And wait until you meet this lady. She's amazing. She's in Florida. She is a real estate consultant and more. And we're going to find out more about Shannon. So welcome, Shannon. It's so great to see and hear you. And it's been great becoming a friend with you. How are you?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm great. Thank you. I'm super excited to be here as well. I'm excited for our new friendship. For those of you that don't know, we met on the gram. Yeah. So we've just kind of taken it from there. And it's kind of fun when you get to meet obviously other breast cancer thrivers, but also other podcast hosts, because then you can kind of talk and learn and help one another. And so we've had some fun together.
Yeah, I love the fact that we just kind of pop on the internet and on each other's platforms and kind of play around with our microphones and video and how you do your stuff and how I do mine. It's just fun to do. I find that kind of like a partnership, right? Yep. So thank you for being willing to work with me on that. And it's just fun. So one of the things I really want to talk about is, number one, my audience. I want them to hear your story because it's pretty dynamic, and especially for who you are today post breast cancer as far as treatment and everything, and what your purpose was to try to get through the treatment. For me, my audience probably notices I have this cute little monkey on my back. Her name is Laylee. She's my granddaughter, and she is the daughter of our oldest daughter, Hannah, who is my stepdaughter. And Laylee, honestly, is one of the reasons I was like, I got to get through this breast cancer. This really sucks. And I need to figure out a way to get through this so that I can help educate too and grow old and have her with me and things like that. And so, Laylee, can you say hello to the audience and to Shannon?
Hello.
Hello. So Laylee's kind of funny. She's old enough to understand that Glamma, she calls me Glamma, had breast cancer. And she also understands and remembers that 2 summers ago, I was flat out bald. And that's kind of strange for a little girl, you know, to see someone go bald. So how was that for you, Laylee? What were your thoughts when Glamma told you that I had cancer and that I was going to lose my hair, and then I did lose my hair? What were your thoughts about that?
Very sad.
Very sad. And then what? Did you get used to it that I was bald? Kinda?
Not really.
Not really. It was really weird. We have some fun pictures together. When I would wear my hats, and then we would take pictures of me bald and everything. Cause I really wanted to try to normalize the fact that, you know, there's a lot of breast cancer patients out there. 1 in 8 women get diagnosed sometime in their lifetime, and not all people go bald. It just depends on the chemo you have. But I wanted to normalize this so that she had an understanding. So anyway, are you good that the glam is all good now? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she knows that I had a double mastectomy and reconstruction. She's seen the incisions and everything. So she's been with me the whole time, and I just love this girl, and she's so smart. So she's one of my whys. Okay, so I'm going to get on with interviewing Shannon so that we can hear her story. Okay, so you can go up and do some yoga with Pops.
Okay.
All right, I love you.
Here you go.
Bye-bye.
I think it's important too, because I know that one of your big things and mine as well is really about early detection. And she will remember watching what you went through. So when it comes to wellness exams and things like that will be in the back of her head of like, oh my gosh, I know what they're talking about, why I need to get my screenings, why I need to go to the doctors, why I need to get tested and all of that. So
100%. Yeah. Those are the thought processes that go through my head. It's like, how can I reach every single one? Like, I need to even talk to my nieces, right? So this was not something that was in our family. Like, it was not genetic, and most breast cancer is not genetic. And
Correct.
So now that Jamie has breast cancer, Aunt Jamie, right? So my two nieces really need to pay attention to that, because now it is, right? I mean,
there's only 5 to 10% of cancers that are hereditary.
Yeah. Yeah. So enough about me and all that. I want to hear about you. I want our audience to learn who Shannon Burrows is and who you were before breast cancer, what your diagnosis was, treatment, and all the things. And we'll just kind of weave in and out of that.
All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to say I'm a badass life changer. Can we just start with that?
Yes, we can start with that. I love it. Well, you've changed my life. That's for sure.
I'm just going to leave that one right there. Yeah, so I was diagnosed July 13th, 2017, one day before my dad's surprise 75th birthday. And it started back in May of 2017. Well, first of all, I've been in real estate for 20 years, but I also have my NASM personal training certification, National Academy of Sports Medicine. And I got to a point that I was like, my happy place was solely in the gym. That's it. Like, I just want to be in the gym, whatever. Real estate agents were pissing me off. They're just so obnoxious because they didn't want to learn anything. And I was vice president of business development at that point, teaching agents how to grow their business and do all the things. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take a little break for a second. I'm going to just spend my time in the gym, and I'm going to change people's lives in the gym. And I want to have them be, happier, healthier, create a better lifestyle for themselves. And 3 months into it, I was diagnosed. And I was like, well, that wasn't exactly the path I thought I opened up the door to. Anyway, it started in May of 2017, and it was Mother's Day weekend. And I remember this because my husband and I got into like a wicked fight, like to the point where I was like, oh my God, are we getting divorced? So my anxiety was like super high. But at the same time, I was like, okay, Shannon, like dial it back. Like, you can get through stress and anxiety. It's not a big deal. But for 6 days, I had the feeling of anxiety and high blood pressure. And because I'm very in tune with my body, being a fitness professional as well, I always try to be in check with my health because my dad's diabetic, there's high blood pressure, there's diabetes in the family. Like, I'm all about creating that lifestyle by design and being a healthy person all around. So I knew that feeling of like anxiousness and high blood pressure was like not normal, especially for 6 days. But I was 45. And at that point, I remember being like, I am literally at the peak of my life. I'm 45 years old. Like, I can see myself living till 90. The rest of it is downhill. Oh, fuck. If I get to 50, I'm not at the peak anymore because I don't see myself being 100. So I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is the real deal. This is real life. How is this story going to end up? And I'm a true believer that our stories are our stories and each page is for us to write it, right? So after having 6 days of high blood pressure and anxiety, I was like, I need to get to the doctor because I really felt like I was going to stroke out. Well, because I'm so healthy, I didn't have a regular doctor to go to on a regular basis. So when I called the doctor on my insurance, they're like, oh, well, we can't get you in for a month. And I was like, I'm going to stroke out by then. I'm like, sorry. So my husband asked me if I wanted to go to his doctor, who he wasn't a fan of for me. He was fine with him. And I was like, yeah, I don't care at this point. I just need to go somewhere. Well, sure as shit, I went in there. My blood pressure was 170 over 130.
Oh my.
Yeah. And I was going to stroke out. Doctor threw me on the EKG table. Everything was fine. And he was like, well, we're going to start with, I'm going to give you this pill. And I was like, and what is that? And he's like, you're going to be on a prescription for high blood pressure and anxiety. And I was like, the fuck I am. I'm like, I am not. You're not giving me a pill to mask the problem. What we're going to do is we're going to sit down and we're going to get to the root of the problem. Now, I don't believe in pharmaceuticals if you can get to the root of the problem, right? Like, there's times that you have to take medicine. Obviously, if you're diabetic, you have to take insulin, right? There's things that you have to do. But the majority of health issues come from within, and most of it comes from inflammation in the body. And being that as a health professional, I'm like, let's dial in. Let's dial this back and let's really get to the root of this because there's something underlying here. And if we can fix it, let's fix it. So for me, I was like, it has to be my hormones. My hormones have to be out of whack. They're like, not balanced. Rewind a bit. rewind and fast forward at the same time, I do attribute my breast cancer to going through in vitro. I had to go through in vitro fertilization to have my daughter. And I got pregnant at 35 and had her at 36. I lost her twin. They wanted to do an amnio on me. And I said no, because this was the only, I'm not going to risk losing the other child. And I remember being like 35, 36. And I'm thinking, this is a lot of hormones that like went into my body, but never thought. And I'm sure it was on page like 26 of 126 pages that were like, you're at risk for. And I'd be like, okay. And to this day, honestly, I would do it again. I really would, because my daughter is my miracle child and she is the world. And I did 2 more cycles after that. She is one of my whys, but I want to get back to mark that one because your whys change. So I remember being like, we need to check my hormones. And he was like, well, that's fine, but that means I'm going to have to do your woman's wellness exam. And I was like, we can do whatever. My OB just passed away last month from brain cancer. And I was like, but you're not doing my woman's wellness exam. Let's just make sure we're clear on that. You're not going to my cha-cha. So started with that whole process, and we were like, okay, did that, did the gynecological exam. And then he was like, when's the last time you had an MRI? And I was like, I don't know, last time. And I realized I missed 1 year. He's like, well, all right, let's get in for the MRI. And I was like, okay. Went for the MRI. Now we just recorded your podcast for my episode, and we talked about the face that the doctors, you just know, right? Like when I was in the doctor's office, when I went for my ultrasound and I found out the ultrasound tech was like, no words, right? And that's when I found out I lost a twin. There's no more heartbeat. And then it was, can you just go sit out in the waiting room and wait for Dr. Stowe's? I'm like, this is not normal. Same thing happened. It's like, you got your MRI. All right, can you just have a seat out in the hallway? We're going to have the radiologist. I was like, I've never had this before. So sure enough, fast forward, that's when the whole process started of did the mammogram, did the MRI, did the biopsy, which was painful as shit. And I cried.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not a big crier. Like, how do I cry from a needle going in there? It was horrible.
It's painful. It's really painful. There's got to be a different way.
There has to be. I mean, I've talked to some people like, oh, it wasn't that bad. I was like, what? Like, I went home and had wine and Tylenol and just chilled out. So I had my biopsy. 6 days later, it came in, and that was July 13th, 2017. And I was driving in my car. I know exactly where I was. My brother had just flown into town from Connecticut because we were driving across the state to go throw a surprise party for our dad. And I was driving in the car, and the radiologist called. And he was like, hi, this is Dr. So-and-so, blah, blah, blah. Just like, the date and the time. I don't remember the time. I know roughly the time it was. But he told me while I was driving.
Oh, yeah. Not a good idea.
It wasn't like, hey, are you sitting down? Do you have a minute? Are you busy? It was like, hi, this is Dr. So-and-so. I just want to give you the results of your biopsy, and you have breast cancer. I was like, I'm sorry, what? And so I was kind of like in shock. And my brother was like trying to write down like everything he was saying because I was like kind of like numb. I was just like, what? So we parked, and my brother was like, so that's how they tell you that you have cancer in Florida? And I was like, I mean, I don't know. I'm new to this. What the fuck? I don't know.
I really, really get very twitchy when I hear stories like that, because there needs to be more empathy and compassion and with how you're telling people. I have a really good friend of mine who has colorectal cancer, and they told her when she was shopping, and like she was by herself, and she was, I can't remember, she was in some cosmetic store, and she called me up and she said, literally, they just called me to tell me, and I'm like by myself. I don't even know what to say about, and they don't even do that for AIDS. Like when you go get an AIDS test, I remember years ago I did, because I don't know, I was dating some guy that found out he was kind of shifty. And anyway, I went and got a test, right? And they don't even tell you over the phone if you know what I mean? Even if you're negative, right? So it kind of scared me. They called me and said, hey, we need you to come in. And I came in there and we sat down there. It's like, oh, you don't have AIDS. I'm like, oh God. Thank you.
Meanwhile, I'm like dying the whole ride in here, right?
But I mean, like, I was so scared. It's like, oh my gosh. I mean, there's got to be a better way. And I know that there are a lot of radiologists and other providers who do actually tell you in a good way. Like, are you sitting down? Are you okay? What can I do to support you? Whatever. So sorry that you had to go through that.
I mean, they call you in to go over your blood results when you just have a blood panel. Yeah, it was crazy. So shortly after that, then my doctor called to tell me. I was like, yeah, I already know. The radiologist already called me. He's like, all right, so I need you in here ASAP. And I was like, well, I'm going across the state for the weekend. I'm sorry. And so he's like, we need to get in here, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, fine. My diagnosis was DCIS. And some people are like, well, DCIS, why did you go through a double mastectomy? Well, I went through a double mastectomy because my general surgeon said, hey, since we have your biopsy, your thing, let's just go ahead and send it in for an oncotype test. And I said, okay, let's do that. So I said, what's that going to do? He's like, it's going to give you your rate of recurrence. And I was like, okay. Because I was like, again, 45. I'm like, I'm not having kids, like whatever. Like I'm done with that. It was a struggle for me because I was like, at first my oncologist that I fired, he was like, well, just do the lumpectomy and radiation. And I was like, that actually doesn't sound like a really valid option for me, but thank you for sharing. Because again, standard textbook, right? Here's the diagnosis. Here's the, follow up with doing this, lumpectomy, radiation. I'm like, well, I'm not interested in just having part of this taken out and then it possibly come back again. And then I have to do this again. And I'm definitely not interested in radiation. So there's got to be something else. So I waited for the oncotype test to come back and it came back super high, came back at 56, which meant that I had a pretty high number for it to come back again. And I was like, well, I'm not interested in that either. So I went back into my oncologist who was like this really just like pompous little Argyle sock jerk, right? Like nothing against Argyle socks because, I grew up preppy, but I mean, just his little like Weasley. Anyway, I fired him. So I said, listen, this doesn't seem like a good option for me. I think I'm going to go ahead and follow through with the double mastectomy. And I had asked my general surgeon, hey, if I was your wife or your daughter or your sister or your mom, what would you recommend? And he said, double mastectomy. And I said, done, sign me up. So I went to the oncologist and I told him I was going to do that. And he's like, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. And I said, well, thankfully you're not in charge. So you will no longer be getting my $25 copays. Bye-bye. And that was it. And I said to him, I said, listen, I feel like this really had something to do with going through in vitro. And he was like, oh, that was 10 years ago. And I said, right, but you don't plant an apple seed and it grows the next day. And he's like, yeah, no, probably not. It's definitely not that. And I was like, okay, so we're not even in a conversation. We're in basically like, you're the doctor, you're going to tell me what to do. And I'm not interested in that game. I don't play that game.
Not even on the same page.
No, we're not even in the same book.
Yeah.
We may not even be in the same library.
Totally different genre.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So fired him and then went through the double mastectomy. And then I will say that I did not, if I had to go back and do it again, my girlfriend, Shannon, who also had 2 types of breast cancer at the same time, she actually worked for my general surgeon. And she had recommended to me that I go see this one doctor. And he was in the same plastic surgeon office, Florida cancer specialist, I'm sorry, not Florida cancer specialist, but the plastic surgery of Palm Beaches. And my general surgeon usually refers me to Dr. Vineyard, but he didn't do that because I just said, well, I'm going to go with Dr. I'm not going to say his name because I'm going to trash him. So I'm not going to trash his name. Anyway, I'm all about uplifting somebody. I'm not about trashing you just because it was my experience. It doesn't mean everybody. Anyway, so I went to this plastic surgeon, was not in love with him, but she swore that he was great and this, that, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, fine. So I did. And I should have, listeners, you should go and get different opinions from other people and find who meshes with you, your personality, your values, your everything.
Thank you.
Yes, I truly, truly, truly believe that. But I also believe the outcome of mine ended really well. So I'm happy with that. So it was just part of my journey. Anyway, I had my double mastectomy. And then 4 or 5-ish days later, my right breast was like not healing. I had my drains, everything. And it was just like still scabby. And like next thing I know, it's like purple. So I'm in the doctor's office and I was like, yeah, something's not right here. Like it's just weird. So I go in and at that point I was intermittent fasting. And he was like, yeah, we're going to need to go into the hospital and go into surgery tomorrow and clean it up. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? He's like, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and clean it up. And I was like, what does that mean? He's like, well, you have necrosis of the nipple and this, and talking all jargon to me. And I was like, well, I mean, like I'm here, I'm intermittent fasting. We can just go right into your little surgical center right there. He's like, nope, we have to run through insurance. And I was like, oh Lord. I literally thought when he said clean it up, I thought you were just going to kind of go in there, like, I'll just say vacuum for a loose term, but like, I thought you were just going to kind of go in there, open up the incision, kind of drain it out, take out the dry blood, whatever. I had no idea what cleanup meant in his eyes, nor did I know what necrosis was, nothing. So I was like, okay, we'll just go in, clean it up. Well, I did that. And then that night, as I went to go clean up my wounds, I found out my nipple was missing. And I had done a nipple sparing double mastectomy. Yeah. I ended up with necrosis of the right nipple and we went in for surgery. I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to come out and it's just not going to be purple and dry blood and it's not going to be gross like it was. It was 11 o'clock at night. My husband was in my daughter's room, had put her to sleep and fell asleep in there. And I went to go do my drain and clean my incisions. And I look and my nipple's missing. And I was like, what the actual fuck? And I screamed at the top of my lungs. Now, mind you, I was raped my freshman year of college. This was horrible because this was like, being raped was a violation. Don't get me wrong, but you took a freaking body part of mine. Like, yeah. And you didn't tell me. He said nothing to me. He said nothing to my husband. He said nothing to the nurses that are in recovery. Nothing. That was his version of cleanup. So I am mortified. I now have to take a Xanax to go to sleep because I'm hyperventilating. I'm freaking out. I'm saying to my husband, tell me, right? It's like, there's nothing there. Like, I'm not going crazy, right? Next morning, this is the first time I've ever taken pictures of my breasts and sent them to anybody. And now I'm sending them to everyone because I don't know about you, but at this point, I'm like, these are just objects on my body to fill my bra at this point. There's nothing sexual about them. There's nothing, anything. And I'm like taking pictures. I'm sending it to my general surgeon. And he was like, that's so bizarre because I saw him in the hospital and he said everything went great. And I was like, well, I'm sure it did in his eyes. But like, I'm missing a body part. Yeah. So now I have my left nipple goes off to the side and I don't have one on my right side. So I call them Nemo and Dory. Yep.
Yeah. You just have to pull some humor in there, right? That is quite a story, Shannon. Going back to what you said about making sure that you're, getting a second opinion, going with your gut, going with somebody who you mesh with and all the things is just so important. And I try to drive that home with a lot of different people. And there are so many reasons to do that. And I've even met surgeons like Dr. C at PRMA, Dr. Crisopolo, who says, I actually tell my patients to go get a second opinion. And because it's not going to hurt anyone in the end. Typically, if they go get a second opinion, and it just makes it more comfortable for the patient. And let's face it, when it all comes down to it, it's all about the patient. Mm-hmm. I'm just really sorry that happened. So
I want to continue on that for a hot second. Hold on a second.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's not just the one doctor. You want to make sure that your whole team is on the same page.
Yeah.
Maybe your radiologist doesn't, jive with your general surgeon, or your plastic surgeon doesn't, they need to all be on the same page because, they're essentially kind of like the board of directors for this journey, right?
Yep.
And I think it's super important that you have doctors that you can ask your questions, do your research, get second and third opinions, whatever, and go back and have those discussions, not shut you out and be like, no, this is the way it's going to be done. Because we're all individual. Right? It's not just textbook where like, oh, you have high cholesterol. Well, you better take this or, take some statins for that. It's like, no, you're an individual. And you know what? You might have some other things that go along with whatever this disease is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've heard so many different stories about this type of story anyway. Even my general surgeon, and actually she's more of a breast surgeon now. She was a general surgeon. She primarily deals with breast here in where I live. Is amazing. She put my port in. She's just a really great surgeon. But I had to break up with her because I didn't want implants. And that was just something I knew from the very beginning. And I was terrified. I was already terrified and mortified that I had to get a mastectomy. Mm-hmm. And so luckily, I always tell people it's kismet that I had 3 different people sort of do an intervention and say, hey, there's this other kind of surgery that can be an option for you. And when I did ask her about it, she kind of pushed it off like, I don't know too much about that, but my biggest concern is there's no local care. Well, the facility that I went to is a world-renowned hospital for breast surgery only. And of course, there is local care if you need it. If you're, you have people coming there from all over the world. They've got communication with providers everywhere. But I think the most disappointing part for me was that there was no, let's sit down and talk about this. Mm-hmm. Let me learn more about this. And let's sit down and talk about what's best for you, Jamie Vaughn, you and your body and what you envision. There was nothing like that. And so I just happened to have the strength enough just to say, I'm not doing it here. I'm going to do it in New Orleans instead. But not everybody's like that. Some people, they just get shuffled in and you're like, okay, whatever, and
because they're scared. They have a scarcity mindset of like, oh my God, I was just diagnosed with cancer and these are the doctors and they're telling me what I should do and I should follow all these things. And then they're left with like, oh no, what if that wasn't the right thing? Mm-hmm. It's really sad, especially these younger women that are getting diagnosed and men, women that are getting diagnosed and they're thinking, oh my God, like they have to consider like childbearing, nursing, all of that. It's a lot.
And that is primarily really why I started the podcast, Test Those Breasts, because my main audience They are, breast cancer survivors, but there are a lot of people who are not yet. And so my biggest mission is to reach those people who have never been diagnosed, because we know that 1 in 8 women get diagnosed. And so chances are it's a really good chance that, you're going to get it, right? Men and women. And so I want to be able to educate them so that when it does happen, they can think, okay, I remember listening to a podcast on Shannon Burrows busting out of breast cancer or Tessa's breasts. And I remember them talking about getting second opinions and understanding that there are actually other options out there.
Yep.
And it's important to plug yourself in to find out what those options are and recognize when you're being shuttled into certain things and being told you're going to do this, and this, that there are other options. And so that's my biggest fire in my belly mission that I've got. And so, because I wish so much I would have known about that kind of surgery, like really known about the kind of surgery that I had before, way before, and instead of at the last minute really finding out. And it was just a very stressful time. So, yeah.
Well, and to your point, like your surgeon that you broke up with, because she doesn't specialize in that, it wasn't an option. So therefore, It's not even on the table, right? So they're not going to bring up options that they aren't comfortable with or they don't know much about because they're going to stay their lane, which is kind of good, but not good for you as the patient.
Right. To me, that's completely opposite of what my thought process was, because of course she's not going to say what the options are. But if I come to her or if you go to your surgeon and say, hey, I've heard about this kind of surgery that I'm really interested in looking at, that's another story.
Yep. They should be able to still have the discussion.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's not about trashing my surgeon. She's wonderful. She's a wonderful surgeon. She took my port out and she was super kind to me, asked me questions about the surgery when I'd already had it, super kind about it. I just really want there to be something different in our area where we can actually have those options. And I'm going to push for it.
Well, you push for that, and I'm pushing to bridge the gap between the medical and fitness industry.
Yeah. Oh, so what I want to do is I kind of want to talk about, not kind of, I always say kind of, I really want to talk about how you are such a positive person. You smile a lot on your Instagram. You dance around in your fun, funky pants on Friday and fancy pants or whatever you call it.
Fun Pants Friday.
And you just have such a wonderful aura about you that I was drawn to you almost a year ago. And I think I even reached out to you. I think I sent you an email or a message somewhere, and I don't even know where it was, that said, hey, I'm really interested. I don't even know what I sent to you. All I know is that I think I made connection. I didn't make a connection, but I sent you something.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
No, I don't even know what I said, but more importantly, we found each other on Instagram. And I remember the day, because I followed you. I think I followed you. I remember the day that you followed me, and I'm like, yes, I'm starstruck.
Aww.
Shannon Burrows from Busting Out of Breast Cancer followed me. I was so excited. And then we just made that connection. And honestly, it's like we're sisters from another mister, which is really fun. It's one of the silver linings, because
to the sisterhood.
Yeah, the sisterhood. But let's talk about your exercise program, what you became certified in. And I also want to talk about how you live your life today to, I guess, inspire people and to keep yourself going. Because we know that for some people, breast cancer is something that we just want to shuffle under the rug and move on with life, and which is fine. But we also know that it's always there. Like, we always know that we are a breast cancer survivor. And so what is it that is the fire in your belly that keeps you going and makes you happy and helping other people and all the things?
Well, first of all, my mission is changing the world one smile at a time. And SMILE stands for Simply Making Individual Lifestyle Enhancements. And that is what gets me up every day. Like, I literally think that I'm that crazy freaking person that can change the world, because I will. One person at a time, right? One smile at a time, one person at a time. That's it. And it could be whatever that interaction that we have, that we met. It could be, we just met, we totally hit it off. And we put our pants on the same way, each of us one leg at a time, right? So we're all the same human individuals on this planet. And at the end of the day, really, what are we? We're just like this little minuscule, piece of sand out of the entire universe. So why not live our best life instead of judging other people and just make their life better? And so I really am passionate about changing the world one smile at a time. With that, I believe that my diagnosis came at the time that it did, and which is where I found my purpose at the intersection of passion and pain, because of my mission of I had my mission of changing the world one smile at a time before I was ever diagnosed, which is kind of crazy. That's when I was like, okay, well, this is my purpose then. Again, like you, like I was like, what exactly is my purpose? Like, I know what I want to do, but like, am I really doing enough? Like, yeah, okay, I'm a realtor, I sell houses, like this, that, blah, blah, blah. And I was young. I was, 20 years ago. I've been in real estate for 20 years.
Younger.
So, yeah,
Just younger.
I was younger. Anyway, and so for me, it was just, the path that I chose. My mom was a realtor. My husband, who I met in real estate, we're both realtors. So it didn't really serve a purpose for me per se. It was my job. And at that point, when I was diagnosed, and I was like, that is why I had to step out, because I was stuck. Same thing with the people that I like to speak with in an interview is I like to talk to people that are standing on their story and not stuck in their story. And I feel like I was stuck in my own story, the hamster wheel of doing the same things over and over again, but not really with a purpose. So when you can stand out, and this goes for life in general, when you just kind of feel like you're in that rut and you're just like, oh, like what's going on? Like what's happening? The woe is me. First of all, I can't stand woe is me. It like really makes me want to vomit because I can't understand why you can't get out of your own way. And sometimes it's hard. I get it. But that's why you have to talk to other people and you have to kind of get out of your zone, your comfort zone. Yes. You know what I mean? And you just learn. If there's just one thing that I said to you that like changed your life, my mission's accomplished.
Right. You've saved the world.
Yeah. And I really I am that crazy person and my daughter was like, okay, yeah. And I just want to have peace and joy. I was like, perfect. You can help me change the world. It's going to be great. And so my positivity comes from, honestly, my mom telling me, which is kind of funny because she's kind of negative Nelly now that she's older and like divorced from my dad and whatever. But anyway, she always told me that I could do anything I set my mind to. And that literally stuck in my head. Like literally, she's like, you can do anything you set your mind to. What's the problem? And that's it. It's always that voice in the back of my head. And I will talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime about anything.
Yeah.
And I just love that because I feel like we were put in the space at that time for a reason, good, bad, or indifferent, whether it was not a good situation or not. I feel like, okay, that was a lesson that I was supposed to learn for some reason. I really kind of step outside of myself, if that makes sense, which is how I say positive and I have a bigger picture because it's not just about me.
Right. And to your point, it's all about human connection. And so one of the pieces of advice I always give people when people say, what is one piece of advice? Plug yourself in, plug yourself into other people, plug yourself into organizations that
make you happy.
Yeah. That you can talk to people. I do also give people the advice to, walk through your emotions, let yourself feel the feels.
Yep.
And it's just don't stay there.
Right.
And I remember, I think I told you this story about how I was really stuck in a very dark hole shortly after I was diagnosed. And I was like, I can't stay here. I can't stay here. I'm not going to survive if I stay here. So I literally took it upon myself to find those people out there that I could have that human connection with. And it helped so much because some people just put themselves in that hole and woe is me. It's okay to be woe is me for a minute,
sure,
but get out of there and figure out a way. And so this whole podcast for me, talking to you, talking to all kinds of other people has helped me stand on top of my story. Like you talk about, instead of staying in the story. I don't always talk about myself. I always am interested in other people and to help that next person. So
yeah, because you can always learn. I want to stop for a second and I totally have empathy. I believe that, like you said, people should feel the feels, but don't stay there. And you have to do it when you're ready. Don't push yourself out of that if you're not ready, because then you actually haven't taken the full cycle of being able to feel the feels, right? It's like a breakup, a divorce, or whatever, a death. You go through the anger, the sad, the hurt, the mad, the happy, you go through check all those boxes of every emotion that you have to go through. And for me, I just felt like that was my diagnosis. There was a reason. I already knew at that point. I was like, okay, well, what is my reason? What's happening here? I literally had to stand back. And training in the gym, I was like, well, crap. What am I going to do? I'm coming out with T-Rex arms. How the hell am I going to go back to the gym? I don't know how to get myself through this. No one talks about that when you're in the doctors. They're like, oh, 6 weeks. Yeah, you're good to go. Go back to your normal life. I'm like,
meanwhile, you're going to be like for a while.
Yeah, okay. I have friends that are buying me T-Rex napkins. And I'm like, I don't want those forever.
Let's have a T-Rex party.
All right. And so I'm like, well, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm like, if I can't get myself through this breast cancer recovery, how am I even going to get in the gym? And how am I going to do this changing people's lives in the gym. And so I was like, there's got to be something out there. Like, I have to find what that is. And I did. I found the Cancer Exercise Training Institute, which for a hot second, I did hop on board with her, and I was the vice president of business development because I still, to this day, am super passionate about making sure that people are aware of this certification if you're a trainer, massage therapist, whatever, because no one talks about it. So my mission is to bridge the gap between the medical and fitness industries. That's what I'm taking from this because it is so important and nobody talks about it. No one talks about the fact that when you get done with surgery, if you're on your own, you can't just like pull dishes out of the cabinet.
Right.
You can't go washing your hair. I made myself a bag lady. I literally like put a trash bag over my body because I couldn't not shower. And I went in and did my shower. So I was a bag lady. And never have I been so humiliated. Well, I shouldn't say that. I probably numerous times, but I don't remember. But I never thought at 45 years old that I was going to be standing naked in front of my dad. And I didn't care.
Very vulnerable. Yeah. Yeah.
I would stand there naked. His wife would change my drains. He would do my incisions. I'm like, I just stood there. I'm like, okay, just take care of me. Didn't even care. Didn't even care.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I've always been kind of uninhibited anyway, but my own granddaughter see me naked. She looks at my incisions and I tell her what happened and things like that. But even so, my husband was my caregiver. Even though he has seen me nude, naked a million times, it was still a vulnerable time for me because he was showering me. He got me through, he changed my drains. I've always been someone who did everything for myself, right? I'm very independent.
Yep.
That was a very different experience for me.
Ditto.
To literally, I can't do anything. You have to do this.
Yep.
And so it was very different for him too. But even that, I was very vulnerable at that time. Yeah. We need to put in the show notes some resources to, make sure that people know about that kind of certification.
Yeah.
And So
I became a certified cancer exercise specialist at that point. I knew that was my big takeaway from this was I needed to be the voice because I am, in the real estate community. I'm in the community in real estate and I talk to everyone. I'm a connector. I know a lot of people. And this was like, okay, well, this is what you're supposed to be doing. So being in real estate isn't just for me about selling homes. It's about what happens. It's about being able to live that life of wanting to give back and help others. So for every real estate transaction I do, I give back to the breast cancer community and I make it my mission to bridge that gap between the medical and fitness industries, whether it's support groups, whether it's educating, the medical people that I'm interacting with here or different breast cancer communities. It's just really important. So I want to get all boots on the ground to get more people certified. So other survivors have those resources.
I love that. And you don't only just do stuff for breast cancer. You actually did an organization thing this morning, right? You did like a live organization. Can you share what you did this morning?
Yeah.
Because I don't know enough about it.
My professional organizer that I partner with on my team, she's also a breast cancer survivor. And we just, again, like you and I, we just totally like hit it off. I literally was looking for a professional organizer for one of my listings because they were going to be moving out of state. And I needed someone that could help. She actually has a background in estate planning. And I was like, oh, great. She's got all these connections for like, these expensive artwork and things like that. So we just connected and hit it off. And she was a survivor. And I was like, I need you on my team. I need you on my team. And so we've just hit it off. And so she is awesome for my buyers for moving and for packing up and awesome for my sellers for getting listings going. And so I was like, we need to start a group together because we're so super resourceful when it comes to organizing, decluttering. Like it just, our brains work in the sense of like, we need to help people. And I'm all about empowering women. So we started a Facebook group called Cozy Dwellings with your favorite realtor and organizer. So this morning we decided we were going to do a digital decluttering workshop. And so that's what we did. We kind of went through, a lot of digital decluttering and it was a lot. It was 2 hours. So we're going to break it down. We're going to do little micro mini events within our Facebook group, but it's just to help other people because you realize how crazy life gets,
Yeah, I was just at a women's luncheon yesterday and the guest speaker was talking about the 5 dragons of what keeps you from doing certain things. And one really is
yourself.
I've got it's all about yourself, but depending on what personality you have, like are you a perfect Paula or one of those people who have like overwhelming list of things to do, or somebody who always has to have their calendar completely packed, people who are, unorganized by nature. So I'm unorganized by nature. I really have to overcompensate. So like every single year, taxes are just a shit show for me just to be,
Ditto.
I mean, I have all my stuff. It's just a matter of why don't I just plug it into QuickBooks, la, la, la. So I'm going to go back and watch that because you said that you recorded it. And so we'll put that in the show notes too if people want to watch that.
To be transparent, we actually took it down because it was so long. So we said, let's break this down and we're going to do micro mini events. So we're going to start doing it. Our first one will be the last Sunday of this month. Okay. Every Sunday at 4:00 for 30 minutes. Boom. Hop on into the Facebook group. And we're going to do the first one that we're going to do, whatever that Sunday is, 28th, January 28th. Okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be time blocking. Because it is January, let's talk about time blocking and make the best use of our time. Let's start with time blocking every Sunday for 30 minutes at 4:00. And so we're going to go through like the closets, the bathrooms, the computers, your files, it's all about organizing because at the end of the day, not just for your life, for simplicity, but also if you're going to get ready to move, hey, I'm your girl. I got you. But I'm going to give you the tips that you actually need to be able to sell your home for more money, get all your stuff out of the house so you're not so cluttered and anxious when it's time to sell.
Staging your house.
Yeah. And then also if you're getting ready to buy, you obviously are moving out of somewhere, whether you're renting or moving out of your current house, organize and declutter and get yourself an easier transition for your move,
Right. It's
hi,
perfect.
Pretty girl.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. She said, hi, pretty girl. You can't hear her, but that's what she said. I need to be on there for sure. And are you going to record those ones?
Yeah. They'll stay in there.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
We're 3 hours behind me.
Yeah. We finally got that one figured out.
Right.
So I want to kind of wrap it up here by asking you, I want to ask you some of those questions that you asked me on the podcast yesterday.
Rapid fire it.
All right.
All right.
Okay. I do want to know what your favorite drink is, and I can guess.
No, go ahead.
What is your favorite drink? Well, I think you probably like bubbly, as in champagne or wine, because I've seen you.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's my favorite party. Yep.
What's your favorite kind of wine? Like your favorite varietal?
Pinot Grigio, Pinot Noir, and Prosecco. All the P's.
Oh. That's so funny because those are 3 of my favorites too. Pinot Noir is actually my favorite red. Sure.
I like to do red in bed.
Red in bed. I love it. With a little chocolate.
Sometimes.
Did you see Sideways, the movie Sideways?
No.
Oh, you got to watch that with Paul Giamatti. I'm just going to have you watch it. There's a scene in there that he has. It's like a monologue about why Pinot Noir is his favorite. I'll send you a clip of it, but you got to watch the movie. Okay. It's really good. What do you drive?
I just got myself a new car this past year, and I got a 2022 Palisade Calligraphy, and I love it. Her name is Pearl. She's beautiful.
Oh, Pearl. Beautiful. That's a neat name. I wear my mom's Pearl. I love it.
Aww.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Neither.
Okay. Hot chocolate or?
Hot water with lemon.
Hot water with lemon.
I'll tell you why. I don't do coffee. I tried to do coffee around 45, 46. I'm like, I've made it this far in my life. Why the hell do I need to start doing this now? This is a horrible habit. And come to find out, my body can't handle caffeine.
Oh, okay. I guess that's a reason.
Yeah. I go off the Richter scale.
Meat or no meat?
Yeah, bring it. Good old filet.
Bring it meat. Okay, bring it filet. What is your favorite restaurant?
Sushi.
You and we need to go to sushi sometime.
Sushi and wine.
Sushi and wine. I like it. I love it. What is your one big, huge piece? I know this has been sort of kind of talked about throughout the whole podcast, but if you really had to leave someone who has just been diagnosed with breast cancer, or any cancer really for that matter, what is your one big piece of advice that you would leave them with?
I would send them my ebook that I wrote for that exact thing.
Okay.
I would send them my ebook and I would really, really drive home to be your own advocate.
Okay. I like it. Advocacy. Drive it home. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to sound like an asshole.
Yeah. It's your life. It's your life. It's your body. It's your journey. They're there just to assist you. You make the decisions.
In the show notes, I'm going to put how to reach you, all the links anything that we talked about in your podcast episodes and with busting out of breast cancer. And it has been such a pleasure having these conversations with you. I thoroughly love hearing the different types of stories. And I always somehow find such amazing similarities too. So we would never even know each other, Shannon.
I know.
Had this not happened to us, right? So there's some silver linings.
I always say it's the worst club with the best members.
Totally. Okay. So is there anything you'd like to leave us with before we wrap up?
Just anyone that wants to reach out, I would like you to help me change the world one smile at a time.
Okay. Well, I'm there with you. Okay.
And if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, I'm your girl. Your favorite fun Brazilian realtor.
I can't imagine. I would love to be going around with you all day long looking at houses. You would be such a kick. Someday, maybe someday.
Someday. Yes, I can help people all over the world. So I have a team all over. So if you have questions, if you just have questions on the process of whatever, I am here to help. I can refer you to anybody. I am an excellent resource for vendors, for everything. So yeah.
Very
and just
good
know that everything that I do goes back to breast cancer. So you're helping not just me, but you're helping other survivors, thrivers.
Even better. Even better. Love it. All right. Well, thank you very much, Shannon Burrows, with busting out of breast cancer and all the other things that you do that are amazing and, just kind of bring light to so many different people, changing the world. Thank you for being on my show. And to my audience, thank you for joining me again on this episode of Test Those Breasts. If you are enjoying this podcast, please, please, please go and rate and review. It really does make a difference. It makes a difference in viewership and, people do read those and it's just so helpful. And I personally would love for you to be able to go and do that. And I appreciate you joining us and we will see you next time on the next episode of Test Those Breasts. Bye for now. Friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I hope you got some great, much needed information that will help you with your journey. As always, I am open to guests to add value to my show, and I'm also open to being a guest on other podcasts where I can add value. So please reach out if you'd like to collaborate. My contact information is in the show notes. And as a reminder, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast will truly help build a bigger audience all over the world. I thank you for your efforts. I look forward to sharing my next episode of Test Those Breasts.